Okay, it's been a while since I did a tutorial video, but I wanted to show, I did this a while ago, how I did this triangle. Now you can minimize how I did this to probably make it a triangle ear flap if you want. I know I did a video on how to do a rectangle one, but I was playing around one day trying to figure out this one idea. Didn't come out the way I wanted. It ended up coming out like this, and I was like, oh, that's a good triangle. Now the only reason it looks so open here is I skipped pegs, but you don't have to do that. So, give it the color. Okay, this is a triangle. Now you say, well, what are you going to do with this? Well, my idea is if you have these triangles and you make yourself four of them, then you can kind of sew them together and make a bigger square so that you can almost do it like a blanket if you wanted. So you could do a different color as a triangle. The other idea I had before I show you how to do it is an elf hat, because a lot of times I think decreasing on the circle loom can be a little tricky if you're new. But my simple technique to make a triangle, and if you use probably one of the bigger square or straight looms, because you're going to use a straight loom for this, if you use one of the bigger ones and you play around with the idea that I have, what you can do is fold it, as you can see, and you can sew it, and that would almost get you like a dunce cap. I think it would work. I haven't done it yet, but it's just an idea. Now you're going to say, well, sewing this is going to be a pain in the butt. Not really. I'll do another video showing you how I think you can easily attach this together using the loom. Well, let me just tell you right now. So you got your loom, and then you might need a bigger size. What you're going to do is take one side of this that you already have after you make it. If you want to close it up to make it more like a cone-shaped tube thing, great idea. If you want to close it off and stuff it and make an ice cream cone on top, if you did a different color. But all you might have to do, like I said, I have to play around with this idea myself, would be to reattach it to the loom. So find the holes that you have. So you may have to use, like I said, a different loom, and you're going to reattach those, on there. So you're just going to grab a loop and put it on. See, that's how I'm doing it. I'm just re-putting the loops on. And I believe if you do that all the way over, which I'm going to need, like I said, I would want a longer straight loom so I can have it all on one side to work with it. So right now, as you can see, it goes past it. So I would use probably the next size up straight loom or so forth, so that I can lay all these on there by reattaching the loop, as you see. And then what you're going to do is grab another piece of yarn, do your slip knot, put it on top of this one, and knit over, and then bring the other side around and lay it on top, so that you're closing off the loom, right? And then you can knit over. So that's the idea I have. I still have to play around with it. But anyhow, back to the beginning. To do this triangle shape, which I think you can modify this, well, ear flap might be tricky because the way I do this is this bigger part is what we start with. When we start, we're going to use, you can go all the way around. Let's start here and go all the way around to end up here. But for the sake of this tutorial, we're only going to work on these pegs, in between these pegs. So you're going to cast on, like I said, this is a little bigger than what we're going to do. You're going to cast on, so you're going to start with the biggest part of the triangle. And as you're decreasing, when you end it, this is where we start, is down here. When we end, we're left with one little peg. I haven't cut this off yet. That's our ending triangle, and that makes our triangle. Let me see if I can get that. So, the yarn I have next to me right now, which I just lost my tool. Oh yeah, my little tool. You may need a crochet hook. You'll need scissors, obviously. I'm going to use orange today, just because that happens to be next to me. And it's left over from a Halloween project, so I gotta find the end. Now, again, with this, excuse me, you have to keep, my goodness, does this end? Okay, it finally ended. Anyhow, now, for the sake of the tutorial, I'm only going to use one strand. I believe for this, I think I only actually used one strand for this. As you can see, it's pretty open. So if you don't want it to be as open as this, use two strands at once and do the same idea you're going to see me do. Okay, and I lost my end again. Okay. I tell you, yarn drives me nuts. This actually has a little slip knot on it from when I was using it before. So, now what I did is I left the little tail on it because I can hide that, just to make it a little easier. So all you're going to do is you're going to place your slip knot on there, and you're going to E-wrap all the pegs going from where you start to where you stop. Like I said, you can work all the way around. Don't worry about this peg. You can start here. I'm sorry. You can start here, work your way down, around, and up to this one, and go back and forth. Like I said, for this one, I'm only going to use one side, because that's going to give us the idea. I believe that will work the way I want it to. Alright. So we're just going to wrap them. Okay, so I just wrapped it the once. Now we're going to go back through. Now when you wrap back through, you're not going to be wrapping the peg that you start with. You're actually going to wrap the second peg. So it's going to look like this. Okay? The one where you wrap back, that won't have one, and you'll start doing your two. Okay? Because you're going to go back and forth. And then once you get that, you can decide how many stitches you want to do. If you want to do it, if you want to do a tight stitch or chunky stitch, whatever, go ahead and do that. But we're just going to do the simple E-wrap and knit over for this tutorial. But you can modify this any way you choose. It sounds like you can kind of see what I'm doing. I'm just knitting over. Now I haven't done this in a while. And you probably could attach these again to a hat if you made them small enough and you didn't want to do them just right on the hat. What you could do is make them, and the same idea we have, just lay it back on top of the project and then start doing your hat with this already hanging down off of it, if you understand what I'm saying. Okay, so we already knitted that over. So push these down. I like to push them down just because I want the room. Okay, so we're going to go back the other way. Because you want to kind of, almost like you're doing back and go this one way, then the other way kind of thing. And that's why I leave this hanging here, because then I know that's where I started. That's where I started it, and it just helps me keep track of how I'm going back and forth. Okay, so now we're going to wrap again. We're going to have the same issue where this peg here is not going to get wrapped on this time around. It's just going to look like that. So see, that one's going to be left just one strand. Now we're going to have that. And we wrap this. And what you're going to end up doing is basically working your way in. Is the only way to describe it, to make this triangle. It's to me, the easiest way to describe it is you're going to go through, you're knitting this over. Like I said, this is going to be your base. I do want to look real quick to make sure. Yeah, I think we're okay. So we did basically like going back and forth twice. Went once, went twice back. Okay. Now since you did this for a couple times, what you're going to do now, or what's going to help create that triangle effect, is you're going to take these end pegs, and move back a bit, the loops that are on here, and move them over to here. And knit over. Knit the, oops, knit that way too long. Okay, and knit those two loops, because it should look like this. So you should have two loops, oops, two loops on this one, and two loops on that. Knit them over to lock them in place. Okay. And now you're going to go back, start here, go 1, 2 back. You're going to make sure you do 2 rows for each thing, for each decreasing it over. So here's number 1, and we knit over. It looks like this. And we're going to knit it over. I mean, this isn't perfect. Like I said, it'd be different with 2 strands. It'd be a little thicker. If I did a tighter stitch, it'd be a little different. This is just the idea of how I would make the triangle. So push them back down. We went 1 row over. Now we go back. And you could change this out with how many times you want to go back and forth. The idea is, so now we're going to wrap back again. And that gives us 2 times doing this row. To make sure these end pegs each get wrapped like they would normally do. Because normally they would get not wrapped. So you want to make sure they're wrapped. Okay. And then you're going to do the same thing again that we just did. You're going to move the outer peg, oops, excuse me, the last 2 you have here, and move them over. So you're working your way to the middle, basically. That's what I like about it. It seems it just seems easier to just do it this way, because it seems to work. But what you may have to do is more rows in between, to get a fuller effect. So you may decide, well, I want to go back and forth a few more times before I decrease it over. And that's fine. That is up to you. Okay, so now we're going to go this way. So all I'm going to do, as you can see, you can kind of see a little bit through there that it's starting to decrease. It'll show through in a little bit. So like I said, when you wrap one, going back, this one doesn't only get one. So you kind of end up, because you have your string, so you're just going to end up rewrapping back this way. So that, like I said, you can change out, like I would recommend probably 2 strands or doing a tighter stitch. Make sure it goes over. And the idea I had, where I came up with that, after I came up with that, was the idea that I want to do 4 different triangles and make like a bigger square. That's my idea. And pieces kind of together, and then eventually make a big huge blanket. Okay, so now we're back this way, and again, when we're coming back the way, you're going to have this one only have one, and then you wrap these. So you're going to wrap your way back to the other side before you do the moving the loops over. That just ensures that the end pegs are getting done. It should make the triangle, I hope, because I believe is how I did it that day. I had a different idea that I was trying to do. I can't remember what it was I was trying to do, actually. I was trying to do something, and so I was playing around with this idea, and it came out like this, and I'm like, that could work for something else. Okay, so push them down. And you'll start to see that kind of taking shape a little bit on below. And now you're going to move those last 2 over. We've already did both of them. Like I said, it might be better to do maybe a couple times back and forth for each row, just because of the look of it. This is just a quicker tutorial to show you how I did it. And I don't usually do a start to finish tutorial. And I figure this is a quick way to show start to finish roughly what I do. I'll go back over. I mean, usually works pretty well. Like, almost what you'd want to do, because it's going to end with 2 pegs in between, is you may want to go over like one more, so that when you get ready to make the point, it's only one last peg on there. But this should still work okay for what we want to do. And what I love is trying to figure out the different things you can do on the loom, just playing around. Sometimes it's just a matter of sitting there with the yarn, trying out different stitches, trying different ideas of, and be ready to fail at it too. I mean, there's times I do stuff I'm like, oh, this didn't come out what I wanted, but then I can use it for something else. But all I'm doing is I'm moving them over. As you see, I'm getting down to the last 4. So that's why I think I probably should have went over one more, because if I would have went over to here and I still started here, it would have been working its way in better to give me that 1 in the middle. So that's what you can do too, is just give yourself having it end on 1, but you may not. You may want to have it just be a little less pointy, but if you want to actually sew these together. I'll put them out. It's just a cute little idea, and you'll see it in a minute. It's not quite the same because, like I said, I think I did a different stitch pattern there. I think I actually did some purling in there a little bit. I just changed things up, and I used more. This is a smaller triangle than I normally do. And it's just the idea of trying, like I said, out different things on the loom. As you can see, it's dangling. That's how it's dangling down. So see, we're getting our triangle. It's curling a little bit, which you'll be able to kind of fix when you're sewing it to whatever. Now, what I'm going to do, oops, do it this way, because I have 2, is I'm going to move this one over to there so that only on 1 peg. Pretty much like we've been doing. I don't know if this will get the point. I totally want, now we got it like that. Now you want to take this off. So what I'm going to do, find my scissors, and I'm going to cut a strand. I always try to give myself more than what I think I need. And now, you don't really need your crochet hook for this, but I'm going to use it anyway. Okay, you're going to take it off the crochet, you're going to use your crochet hook and take that loop off of the loom. And you're going to find that strand that we just cut that I just lost. And you're going to bring that through this little point. Now, a lot of people do like the increasing and decreasing within it. I don't see the difference. Like this kind of works for me, and I give it a little tug, and then you can kind of. I mean, this isn't as point as it would be because, like I said, move one more peg over and you'll get that more of a point. Or what you can kind of do is there's a loop over here, so I'm gonna bring that piece of thing through there to kind of help give it a little more of a point. And then I tie it off, keep it from coming off. And if you look, and you can hide that later if you look. Like I said, it's a little cheesier because it's a smaller. So see, this is what's cool, is we used one side of this, okay, just one side, and it came out this small because of doing that. So you really have to think, and what you can do, and it's like, because I did this big one, I don't remember what I did on, is you can decide to do like going back and forth a few more times before you decrease, because as you can tell, this one's a little more sharp of a triangle. Okay, so you may say, well, I'm going to go back and forth a little more. So really, you have to play around with how big you want that triangle to be. Like I said, this one's pretty big, and this might have actually been done on this loom, and it might have been done by going all the way around. I think that's actually what I did, because the best thing to do if you want a little bigger, like this size, on this loom would be to start at these two pegs, so you're going to wrap it so it's all the way around, and then that way you're just working your way down till this becomes the last peg that you take off as the loop. That's another idea. That would, if on any of the straight looms, is ignore the peg in the middle at the top, so like pretend it's not there, and just work your way, from here down, kind of thing, when you're wrapping it. The same way we did this one, but that way you'll know your last peg would be whatever the one's right there. But excuse me, that's why I figured these would be cool to make. I'm gonna make some more. I'm gonna try to use 2 strands. This was just some practice yarn, and the way I did the bigger grooves, excuse me, is I just pretty much skipped pegs. So hopefully you like the tutorials, just quickly how I make triangles that you can use for other projects. Have a good night.